Good day, ladies and gentlemen. We're joined here today by Jordan Trimble of Skyharbour Resources. Jordan is the CEO and he's focusing on advancing a very aggressive exploration campaign and portfolio in the Athabasca Basin. Jordan, why don't you tell us about your company?
Great. Well, thanks for having me. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for taking the time. Very much appreciate everyone tuning in. I see there were a number of other Athabasca Basin uranium companies preceding us, so it'll make my job a little bit easier. I'll skip through some of the presentation, uranium market fundamentals. I'm happy to discuss that in the Q&A or offline and just focus more in on the specifics of the company. For those of you not familiar with Skyharbour Resources, we are a high-grade uranium exploration and early stage development company. We have 6 projects, all at various stages of exploration, some at an advanced stage of exploration, others at earlier stage. They're scattered throughout the Athabasca Basin. It's a dominant land package, over 250,000 hectares. And I'm the president and CEO. I came in to run the company about 8 years ago when we started acquiring these projects. One of the things we did in the early days was take advantage of the depressed uranium market, a true contrarian opportunity. And we were able to amass this project portfolio at really pennies on the dollar, having spent just north of 5 million Canadian for this portfolio. I think there's a good case to be had that there's going to be a strong re-rating on the current asset base. But getting into the strategy more specifically for the company, and I'll talk in more detail as we work our way through the presentation. We do have a dual-pronged strategy. First and foremost, we are an exploration and discovery story. We're looking to emulate the success that other exploration discovery stories have had in the Athabasca Basin in recent years. Those of NextGen, Fission, more recently IsoEnergy. We believe we're going to be the next one. And then secondly, we do act as a prospect generator, and this is unique to Skyharbour in that we've, through, again, this acquisition strategy over the last 8 years, we've built a big project portfolio, and we look to bring in strategic partner companies that can advance the secondary projects that we have. We've since consummated 3 deals with 3 different partner companies, one of which is industry leader Orano, France's largest uranium mining and nuclear fuel cycle company. They're partners with us at our Preston project. And then more recently, we announced a new deal with a new ASX listed company, Valor Resources. We announced this in December, and earn an option at our North Falcon Point project. And last but not least, our third partner, Azincourt Energy, just presented their flagship project being the East Preston project. So I'll get right into the slides here because we don't have a whole lot of time. Just quickly, forward-looking statements. I implore everyone to take the time to read through this when you have some free time. The investment highlights, we like to highlight 3 pillars of the company that really are the core ingredients for success. One is the people. So by that, I mean the management team, the technical team, but also our strategic partners and shareholders. Our largest corporate and strategic shareholder is Denison Mines. Management and insiders, we have a lot of stock as well. I've continued to purchase shares in the open market, as you will see with my insider filings. The second part there is timing. So timing with the uranium market. Again, I won't spend a lot of time talking about the uranium mining market. Needless to say, in the last 4 or 5 months, we've seen a complete turnaround in sentiment. We've seen money come into the space for a variety of different reasons. One of the big ones being this new ESG crowd that that's entering the space, and more generalist money coming in. I think we'll see that trend continue. Really, at the end of the day, the underlying fundamentals and the supply-demand picture for this commodity, for this metal, I think are the strongest of any out there. And again, I'm happy to answer any Q&A on that afterwards. And then last but not least, the projects, the assets that we have. As I pointed out, we have a big project portfolio. We have 2 projects that have deposits. Our flagship project, Moore Lake, where we're actively exploring and drilling, we've worked on for the last several years. We've had some notable high-grade drill results in previous years, including 21% U3O8 over 1.5 meters within 6% over 6 meters. We just announced recent results from a recent drill program back in December and January, where we intersected the longest zones of continuous uranium mineralization found yet at the project. So I'll talk a bit more about that as we work our way through, but just a quick introduction to The management team and the board, you'll see me at the top there. Again, president and CEO. I came in to run the company about 8 years ago. I come from more of an entrepreneurial and financial background. I was previously the corporate development manager for a gold company called Bayfield Ventures, which we successfully exited to New Gold back in 2013 and 2014. And that's when I came in to run Skyharbour. I teamed up with my head geologist, Rick Kazmersky. Rick's a 40-year veteran in the Athabasca Basin. He was previously the exploration manager at Cameco. He then left and started running a company called Skyharbour Resources, which he had a lot of success with. The company went from a $5 or $6 million market cap at the bottom of the market in the early 2000s to a high of over 300 million in the mid 2000s when we had that last major uranium bull market. Rick leads our team, a technical team from Saskatoon, so very focused expertise on uranium exploration and early stage development in the basin. Dave Cates, who is the president and CEO of Denison Mines in UPC, he is a director of Skyharbour. As I mentioned, we have a very close strategic partnership, working relationship with Dave and his team at Denison. Paul Matizik, who's an advisor to the company, well known in the mining space. He led the $1.8 billion takeover of the company, his company Energy Metals, to Uranium One in 2007. Joe Gallucci, who is the head of mining investment banking at Laurentian Bank, joined last year as a director, bringing more capital markets experience to the management team and to the board. And then just rounding out the team, our head field geologist, Christine McKechnie, who has worked for the company now for several years. She oversees all of our field and drill programs at our flagship project. She previously was at Cameco, and she actually wrote her thesis on our Fraser Lakes Zone B deposit at our South Falcon Point project. Quickly on the cap structure, there's about just under 100 million shares issued and outstanding. We trade around a 31, $32 million Canadian market cap. I think that's a key takeaway here. The relative valuation of Skyharbour, certainly compared to some of its peers, is a very attractive notable talking point. I think there's a lot of room to move from here given the current asset base and what we have planned coming up. We trade on the venture. We have a listing in Frankfurt and on the OTCQB. And just a quick note on some of the notable and strategic shareholders. You'll see management and insiders. We own quite a bit of stock. As I said, I continue to purchase shares. Denison Mines, and then a few institutional shareholders that have built positions over the last several years. So I won't go too much into this. As I mentioned, happy to answer any questions, but bottom line is we're very bullish on the space. We think that the notable supply crunch and disruption in particular last year, but really this supply side response that's played out over the last several years due to low prices. We've now seen the primary mine supply shrink to, in 2020, about 120 million pounds in the backdrop of 180 million pounds of demand. And so we're having to continue to draw down inventory. Eventually, we will see this new utility procurement cycle, new contracting. That's going to be, I think, happening this year. That will lead to higher prices. We've more recently seen physical holding companies like Yellowcake raise money to buy material. In particular, the $140 million raise at Yellowcake just announced is going to take about 4.5 to 5 million pounds out of the market. So we're continuing to see a tightening of the market, and I think it's just a matter of time before we see that price really take off. So moving on to the projects in the Athabasca Basin, for those of you not familiar with the basin, it is the highest grade depository of uranium in the world. You'll see some of the grade equivalents. This is what makes it so attractive to raise and spend risk capital exploring for deposits. Some of the major discoveries that we've seen in the previous 10 to 15 years, including NextGen, including fission, including ISO Energy, have yielded major returns, significant returns for investors. And what's intriguing here as well is that there's new exploration techniques, methodologies, and thinking that's been applied to make these discoveries. So your discovery costs have gone down versus where they were 20 to 30 years ago, where it was rudimentary geophysics and then drilling very deep holes, hoping to find that needle in the haystack. Now we have a lot more tools at our disposal to go in and make these high-grade discoveries, and that's something that we are doing at Skyharbour. Here is a map of the Athabasca Basin. This shows all of the land holdings that Skyharbour has. As I mentioned, a very dominant land package Our flagship project you'll see over on the east side over here called Moore Lake. We own 100% of it. We acquired this project in 2016. We've been actively exploring it since 2017. It's an advanced stage exploration project. It's had several hundred drill holes put into it, but what's interesting for us, one of the reasons we acquired it, was that most of the historical exploration and the high-grade mineralization that have been discovered at the project have been found at the unconformity or in the sandstone. Not a lot of historical drilling into the underlying basement rocks, and that's really become the focus for us. That's where we think there is the most exploration and discovery upside. But we do currently have several small high-grade lenses or pods of uranium mineralization sitting at the unconformity, which are interesting in themselves, given the recent mining methods, including ISR and SABRE, that have been proposed for some of these Athabasca Basin uranium deposits. Before I get into more detail on the upcoming drilling plan at Moore, just a quick note on these other projects. You'll see some of the other properties that we have partnerships on, including our Preston project with Orano, our East Preston project with Azincourt, and more recently our North Falcon Point project with the newly listed Valor Resources on the ASX. So I'll skip ahead to slide 21 here just to go through the upcoming exploration plans at our flagship Moore Lake project. We are planning several drill programs this year. We are looking to commence a 2,500 to 3,000 meter drill program in the next month or so. Most of the targets that we'll be drill testing, the majority of the meterage, is going to be testing these basement hosted targets. As I mentioned, this is a project that had a fair bit of historical exploration, but most of that focused in the sandstone or down to the unconformity, which is at about 260 meters at our project. You'll see on this slide here, this conductive corridor, most of the drilling plotted along it. It's about a 4.5 kilometer long prospective corridor. Only about half of it has been systematically drilled. So in addition to the depth potential and the basement potential, there is good exploration discovery potential along strike up to the northeast, and we will be drill testing some of these targets as well. But getting back to our recent results and really just some of the first few drill holes that we've put into the basement rocks, you'll see we announced back in December and January. Just recently, we reported results from our last drill program, and we had one hole at our East Maverick zone into the basement rocks. It intersected 17.5 meters of 0.72% U3O8. Within that, there was 10 meters of 1% U3O8. So that 17.5 meter zone is the longest continuous width uranium mineralization discovered yet at Moore Lake. Very exciting, and in particular, because it's one of the first holes drilled specifically testing for basement hosted mineralization at the East Maverick zone. So we really think we've just scratched the surface. There's a lot more we believe that can be discovered there. We believe that the bulk of the mineralization is hosted in these feeder zones in the basement rock, but we also believe there is strong upside potential along strike and at other regional targets at the project. I will note there's about a dozen other targets regionally. It's a big property, about 35,000 hectares. And all of them have had some historical or previous drilling, and all of them have mineralization. So we're past the point of talking about indicator minerals and good lithology and alteration. We have a lot of smoke on this project and very strong discovery potential going forward. So keep an eye out for news flow on upcoming drill programs at Moore. We will be working towards a resource estimate towards the end of the year. So keep an eye out for that as well. Just wrapping up, I won't spend a whole lot of time on these other projects, but as I mentioned earlier, we do act as a prospect generator with 3 partner companies, 2 of which are over on the west side of the Athabasca Basin. Orano is a strategic partner of ours. They're earning up to 70% at our Preston project. Currently, right beside them is Azincourt. You just saw their presentation, so I won't spend much time talking about their plans, but they just commenced a 2,000 to 2,500 meter drill program at our East Preston project. We're excited about that. Any success that they have will benefit as a shareholder and as a minority interest holder in the project. They have just completed the earn-in for 70% of that project. More recently, just in December, as I pointed out, we announced our third partner company, Valor Resources, based out of Perth. They are optioning our North Falcon Point, or now it's called our Hook Lake project. from us. It's as you'll see the terms here, just under $4 million in cash payments and exploration expenditures over a 3-year period. And we are now very large shareholder of the company with over 233 million shares valued at about $1.6 million Canadian. So our treasury right now, just on that note, with the cash and the shares that we own in other companies, we're north of 5 million. We've just had a bunch of warrants exercised at 27 cents that expire this year that have come in. That's raised about another 1.4 million. So north of 5 million in cash and stock, well funded for all of our exploration plans and drilling at our flagship. And partner companies are funding the bulk of the exploration at our other properties. And just a last note on this project, we announced this morning Valor's plans for a multi-phased exploration program starting with geophysics, some field work in the summer, followed by a phase 3 drill program later this year. And the focus will be at a high-grade surface showing called the Hook Lake target, where samples from surface grade up to 68% U3O8, very high grade and very limited historical drill testing. So finding the source of that high grade mineralization will be significant. I'll just go through these last few slides. We do have 3 other projects: Nan Lake, Yurchison, and South Falcon Point. South Falcon Point, we do have an NI 43-101 7 million pound inferred resource right at surface. It's lower grade at 0.03%, but there's higher grade mineralization at depth. We are looking to bring in a partner company, but I believe we are the only sub 50 million market cap company with a resource, something worth noting. Just in conclusion here, recent milestones and upcoming catalysts. We've been very active with our exploration and drilling at our flagship Moore Lake project. We do have plans, again, to continue advancing this project, to continue adding pounds in the ground and to make new discoveries in the basement rocks. You'll see news flow on that throughout this year and next year. We have partner companies that are actively exploring at our other projects. So you have investment exposure, not to just one program, but to 3 programs that'll be up and running here shortly. Keep an eye out for additional option and joint venture partnerships being announced. We are actively negotiating with a few other companies on our other 100% owned assets. And last but not least, is one of the few remaining active uranium exploration companies. We do offer that leverage, that torque to a rising uranium price and an improving uranium market. So I think that's all the time we have. Want to leave a couple minutes here for Q&A. And
that's perfect, Jordan. Appreciate that. Thanks for the presentation. Just a couple of questions here for Q&A. A lot on Moore. You had mentioned that the resource estimate is targeting sometime the end of the year. Maybe just walk us through what that process looks like to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are planning a few more drill programs between now and then. Like I said, we think there is a lot more that we can find there, especially with these new targets. We've been using some new geophysical techniques and a new geological model and looking in the underlying basement rock. So we think there is good blue sky potential and upside potential. So the idea is to hopefully add to the existing resource and deposit, and then come out with a resource estimate later in the year, really putting our best foot forward.
Perfect. Yeah, just a couple more minutes here. So I'm going to try and amalgamate these 2 questions here. So any byproducts at Moore, and maybe speak to the potential for a basement hosted ore body, what that could do to really augment some of the unconformity hosted resources that have already been identified in the basin. Like why target the basement hosted ore bodies?
Yeah, so yes, there are some byproducts. If you look at some of the previous results from the last few years, we do, when we see higher grade uranium, you typically gets good nickel and cobalt grades as well. Not so dissimilar to other deposits in the basin. You have very rich uranium mineralization, but it's such strong mineralization and mineralizing events that you typically do see other metals associated with it. As for the basement potential and the targets we have, one of the big things for us is that when we took this project, when we acquired this project back in 2016, 2017, we really didn't have these basement hosted targets properly refined. We didn't, there hadn't been much modern geophysics and other preliminary work done to refine these basement hosted targets. So we did a lot of that work in 2018 and 2019. again, a new geological model. And what we've seen thus far is the potential for, again, a much larger, higher grade deposit or deposits at depth in the basement rock. Again, with just the recent results, the first few exploratory drill holes drilled into these new basement hosted targets, we're seeing mineralization. We're having multi% hits and good widths as well. We think we've just nicked the top or the side of something larger. So needless to say, we're quite excited to get back there and continue drill testing it.
That's great. That's all the time that we have today. Thank you, Jordan, for sharing your story.